Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Four Train Savages podcast, episode number 235. Today is March 13th, Friday the 13th. And joining me on the pod once again, Nick Costanzo. Stanzo's joining us here. Nick, it's good to see you. We almost saw some speaking of Friday the 13th, we almost saw some scary things happening now that we're in World Baseball Classic mode right now with Aaron Judge and a lot of Yankees performing in the World Baseball Classic. So a little bit of a shift up this episode. Glad Nick can come on because he's been very, we were talking right before we start hitting record that you are very invested in this World Baseball Classic. And I think a lot of fans, just baseball fans in general, have been way more invested in the World Baseball Classic as the years have gone on. But now we're shifting the frustrations and the scariness that happened usually when we watch Yankees and Aaron Boone decisions or Brian Cashman decisions, and we're actually going to be talking a little bit about what Team USA is doing and Mark DeRosa. Luckily, they are going to be playing tonight against Team Canada at 8 o'clock, so we get to see them actually advance out of the group stage. But man, it was pretty interesting this week and a lot of chatter in just the baseball community. Nick, thanks for hopping on, and glad we could talk a little bit about this and also get into some Yankee stuff. How you doing, man?
Absolutely, it's good. Thanks for having me, Rob. It's always fun hopping on with you when Tyler's out of town. But yeah, it's been awesome watching some baseball that I have an actual emotional investment in early March. It's a really good way to just bridge, the kind of dead sports period to the beginning of baseball season here, and obviously we got March Madness going on as well. So it's exciting sports time of the year right now, which is great. But I'm just glad that Team Italy bailed us out because it just would have been brutal to see a USA team captained by Aaron Judge not get out of the group stage and their last game ending on a Judge strikeout. Although
been bad, man.
But the takes have already been brutal. I mean, there's just people ignoring what he did. I mean, they don't beat Mexico if Aaron Judge doesn't, get the scoring started with a 2-run homer and nail a guy at third base to end a rally with Skeens on the mound. So, it's classic Yankee fan where Judge, anything he does will get discredited and anything he does poorly will get played up. So it would have been a tough look. So I'm glad that they got bailed out of just a brutal game against Italy. I mean, brutally managed. Not a great pitching performance. The offense was dormant for the majority of the game. So I'm glad that that's not the note that Team USA has to go out on, and they'll get another shot to redeem themselves tonight against Canada.
Yeah, 100%. I've bought in. If you're watching on YouTube, I got suckered into getting the Judge USA jersey, and I think it's cool that there's beyond just Team USA. There's so many Yankees now involved in this World Baseball Classic. I think it's been, I want to say 13 or 14, and then switching in, Ryan Yarbrough actually went back to Yankee camp, and the big news yesterday was Tim Hill is joining the team, and we know that their bullpen in Team USA has not been where it needs to be. And I think the big thing that the mindset I've sort of adopted with this World Baseball Classic is usually in spring training we have not a whole lot of storylines. It's more speculation, and luckily enough, knock on wood, we haven't had too much Yankee injury news, which is a good thing. But I love how the World Baseball Classic is sort of that primer for the season. I like it. I think it's a great thing. I know people on the other end of the spectrum will argue, well, why don't they play the World Baseball Classic after October? And sure, you can maybe make that argument. I'm not going to make that argument, but I love it. I think it's a great time for baseball. And I think yesterday there was an interview, I don't know if you saw it, with Julio Rodriguez saying that this tournament means more to him than a World Series win. And to us, maybe the difference that I make between, to the distinct difference between how we feel as fans, maybe traditional Yankee fans, and how we've grown up watching World Series, and that's our bread and butter. That's always going to be the way it is. But if you think about all these international players who probably, I would guess that some of them grew up as fans of the Yankees, fans of the Red Sox, but a lot of them, you'll hear that they're tied to, like, the Dominican team. A lot of those guys worship David Ortiz or Manny Ramirez or say A-Rod, and they've grown up playing with these community of players. and they've played in like their own style of tournaments and their own style of structured baseball, and then they work to this point, and that is why they feel that way. They're not going to be as tied to the teams and the loyalty of the fan bases because they didn't grow up in the New York area. They didn't grow up in the California area rooting for the Dodgers. And I think that's totally cool. And I know I see the comments online of people getting bent out of shape. And I think just the more years that go on of this tournament, and honestly, I know for the Yankees of Aaron Judge and Yankee fans, it wasn't great to have that, like you said, the strikeout, and then that's how he's could have been plastered for this thing. But I think it's good to have a little level of drama with this tournament. It adds some more value to it. It adds more history. And that's one of the things that I've said online to people that may comment back that say, give this thing some more years. It's only really been around for 25, 26 years. Well, yeah, I think the first one was maybe early 2000s. It needs some more time to breathe. And I think we're seeing it as the years go on. And I'm a big fan of it. So if you're listening or watching and you're not, maybe this is the time for you to tune out. But I think it's awesome, brother. It's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. And there's been people hating on it, and I understand it's newer compared to obviously how long baseball has been around. The first one was in 2006. This is the sixth iteration of it. So I semi grew up with it. I guess the first one happened when I was in probably third grade. So it has been around for the majority of my life. And I'm not trying to tell a fan to care about it more than the Yankees potentially going out and winning a World Series. Like, it's not, it won't do the same thing for me. And it's just so different. This is a 2-3 week tournament. You know, baseball, you have a 6 month long regular season where you're watching the team basically every night, and then a month of the playoffs. So I'm not trying to sit here and say that as a fan you should care about this just as much as you care about Major League Baseball, because I certainly don't. But that being said, I don't know how you could not love this when the players are clearly invested. Like you said, Julio Rodriguez said it means more for him playing for his country than it does the Mariners, and who am I to disagree with that? Even, you know, look at Judge hit the home run against Mexico the other night. That's a level of emotion we rarely see from Aaron Judge. It was a playoff like celebration. He himself said it feels like playoff baseball in March. So I understand that for some people that, you know, they're maybe not fully bought in yet, but for me, if you're watching these games, and I'm not saying you have to watch, you know, USA walk 18 times against Brazil and say it's the greatest baseball ever. But some of these games, like, look at what Team Italy's doing. You watch the DR, how they celebrate. You look at that US-Mexico game was a lot of fun the other night. I don't know how, as a baseball fan, you can be invested in Major League Baseball and these players and like the sport and not watch the WBC and say, this is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally on the same page with you. So let's get into this DeRosa stuff, and we'll talk mostly WBC to start the pod, and then later into the pod we'll talk about some updates with the Yankees. They named Max Fried officially as an opening day starter. Cam Schlittler has looked really good in his spring outing so far. Luis Heel, also Giancarlo Stanton mashing a little bit, and then I think we'll get into a little bit of the Spencer Jones stuff and Trent Grisham and how the outfield is going to be orchestrated and some of the rookie stuff with this team of guys like Jason Dominguez and everything, because they've been performing really well. And it's I guess the big note from Yankees camp as of now, while we're distracted from with the WBC. But if you're new to the pod, be sure to subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe there. Comment below what you think of the WBC, and then follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as TikTok. So the big thing that came out the other day, right? Team USA in that Italy matchup, which I got to say, as a person with some Italian heritage, I love what Team Italy does with the espresso shots after a home run. And I think it's cool that they're a team filled with Italian Americans. And I love the vibe of it. I love it. And that was just even though we saw our team and Team USA lose, I think it was an awesome thing for the tournament. And it was probably, I don't know if arguably the biggest upset that we've seen in the tournament history, right? I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly not expected at all. And yeah, as an Italian American, I share the same sentiment where
Yeah.
it's so much fun. The espresso shots in the dugout. Vinny P is awesome. I've been a fan of his for a long time now, and he's, you know, one of the more underrated players. I think people are kind of coming to understand in this
Yeah.
WBC how good he is and how awesome a personality he is. But yeah, it's things like that where obviously I was disappointed to see the USA lose. I was rooting for them heavily, and you know, like we said before, they were at risk of missing the group stage.
Yeah.
But how could you not watch a tournament like that, an upset like that, and say this is awesome?
Yeah. And so the big thing in that game, heading into the game, the morning of, Mark DeRosa, who is clearly on MLB Network, is talking with, I think it was Lauren Shahadi and that group that he has for MLB Central, I think their show is. And they just got like an inside look. And basically his quote was that even though our ticket is punched, we're treating this game still seriously. We're still looking to win this game. And now, Nick, I don't know if you have a differing opinion. I probably would guess that you don't because I think a lot of the internet is on the same page with this. But when someone makes that comment, they think that their ticket is literally punched and he was moving on to the next round. Because yesterday he came out with some comments that clearly he's backtracking and he doubled down on, yeah, I know the rules. But he says this, that their tickets are punched, and goes into that game starting a Paul Goldschmidt over
Hmm.
Bryce Harper, which I think is just the most egregious part. I don't know if you take any more issue with some of the other lineup changes that they had, but he clearly did not. If you could say for this team, he put out a B lineup, he put out a B lineup with Team USA. And just, I think the biggest thing is just Harper not playing in that game where you need to win that game to secure your ability to go out of the pool. And it's not like the pool that they're playing in was a bunch of scrubs. Team Mexico 2-1 at the time. Team Italy was 2-0. Then Team USA is 3-1 or 3-0. If you do the math, if they lose that game, and of course with the tie breaking of the run differential, you are at risk of not doing it, of not advancing. And Mark DeRosa clearly did not know the rules, and it was bad. It was a really bad look.
I think even worse than the lineup decisions, because you're right. Obviously, Goldie over Harper is a decision you would not make in a game that you knew you had to win to advance. Especially too, I think because Harper has not hit great in this WBC. Starting Ernie Clement over Bryce Terang, who's been one of Team USA's better hitters, I think is even more egregious. But it's really how he handled the pitching staff, right? I mean, obviously, no shade to Nolan McLean. Like, he deserved to start that game. He was the best option on the roster to start. He obviously gives up an early three spot. He comes out with Ryan Yarbrough after, who, like Yarbrough, he's a Yankee, but he's a depth starter.
Mm-hmm.
Puts Ryan Yarbrough out there. And also, too, if you're DeRosa and you know the rules, which hand up, I didn't realize the tiebreaker rules going into it because it's a little bit complicated. But if you know that in the event of a three-way tie, it's the run differential, which ultimately would have come down to who allowed the least runs between the USA, Italy, and Mexico if it was a three-way tie. You should be trying to minimize runs as it is, because if the USA loses that game 3-2, it's a lot different than losing that game 8-6. So going to Yarborough, and then I think his oh shit moment, which everyone's pinpointed, and I said the same thing sitting home watching. He's warming up Clayton Kershaw, who's on this team as obviously legendary career. He's a Make-A-Wish player. He's not even pitching in Major League Baseball this year. So having Kershaw warming up and then ultimately going to your best reliever in Mason Miller pretty much signals to the world that you only realized in the middle of that game that the thing you did on the field actually would impact whether or not you advance.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was going to bring up, that the clear evidence there was having Kershaw up and going, and you could make the argument too that he was trying to do it with Goldie. Goldie has participated, I think, in the last three
Yeah.
WBC, and he said in that MLB Central interview that he wants to get guys to be playing more, and that's not what you're trying to really do in this 2 week sprint. Like, if you look at the Dominican Republic, you look at Team Japan, they're treating it in a different way than Team USA was. And that was, at least for that game, but it was put on the biggest stage because it was a massive fuck up, just to put it plainly, that you're not secured. You have other teams that are going to compete, and the next day could knock one of you out, and he wasn't informed. And that's crazy to think, because yes, he doesn't manage another club and he hasn't managed before, but literally, if you want to say your only job as that manager, other than making the lineup card, you could say is know the damn rules. Really.
Right.
That's the thing for me. And then for him yesterday, when he came out and he said, "Oh, I knew the rules," it's saying, no, bullshit, man, because if you knew the rules, Bryce Harper would have been in the game. Ryan Yarborough probably wouldn't have come in right after McLean. You're saying that Clayton Kershaw certainly wouldn't have been warming up if you have if you're down with that lead. And honestly, too, I would even throw in Cal Raleigh should be starting. That's the guy who was the runner-up in MVP. And then I know Will Smith is a very good catcher, but I mean that's the guy who almost broke Judge's record last year. That's just there's a lot of different things you can point to, and you just say my main takeaway, just as an MLB fan, of course, is I think a team that would ever even consider interviewing Mark DeRosa after that is I very fan base is not whatever fan base would be there is saying to themselves, what the F? Really?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue about how Team USA handles this with DeRosa at the helm versus a lot of these other countries is that a lot of these roster decisions and pitching decisions are kind of almost decided in advance. Like, obviously, they end up winning the Mexico game, but if you look at Matthew Boyd in that game, right, he's a starting pitcher for the Chicago Cubs, was obviously not talented enough to make a start in this WBC.
Yeah.
And he did not pitch well in that game. He, lets Mexico back into the game, and he's staying out there to throw 50 pitches because it must have been a stipulation that Craig Counsell only allowed Boyd to go if he was going to get his, pitches in so that he could build up and be ready for the start of the season in a couple weeks. So I think that, and they've rectified it. Yarborough's off the roster. I believe Boyd's off the roster, and they added some true relievers. You mentioned Tim Hill before, and there's a couple other guys, Will Vest, joining Team USA for the group stage, which is good because they're going to need actual relievers and maybe play some actual matchups instead of going in just as predetermined. I get it. I'm not saying, I know it's still spring training. You can't throw Mason Miller out there 3 days in a row or whatever it is. Like, I'm not saying push these guys past their limits, but if you're a starting pitcher and you want to participate in the WBC, I'm sorry, it cannot be this pre-scheduled and determined thing. Like, if you're not good enough to make the rotation, then figure out a way to get the work in on your own, or don't participate, because it was really just some of these decisions, whether it was throwing in Yarborough or letting Boyd go until he got to his pitch count. Those are the kind of things that made it a very close call for the U.S. to not even getting out of pool play.
Yeah, and I just even think it too. DeRosa has been the first one to be preaching that they're taking this thing seriously. And when you do things like that, and you're talking about the team being hung over the night before because they basically thought that their ticket was punched, that's fine. I have no problem with them getting after it a little bit, and they celebrated after beating Team Mexico. I have no problem with that. But you're saying that you're taking it seriously, and then we watch the other teams and the way they're treating it, and like you said, and and a lot of these pitchers, as you mentioned, have a limited workload based on what their MLB teams are saying. That's fine. But some of the decisions, even barring the workload from what the teams have said, is you were just DeRosa and the management of Team USA. It was just bad. It was just not.
Yeah.
It didn't. I don't even think some of it came into play there. So But the moral of the story is that they got out by the skin of their teeth. And also, it was really funny when Pasquantino yesterday said, "You're welcome, Team USA," because they really did them a favor, and it was no sweat for Italy because I think the score ended up being like 8-2, 8-1 or something, and they're mashing, but they're on the other side of the bracket, I think, as of now.
Yep.
But the big I wanted to talk about too. We'll get into some of the other players' stats for for some of their numbers for the WBC, but of course we're most concerned or most interested by talking about Aaron Judge, and then, as you mentioned, he struck out in that final at bat against Team Italy. And so far in the game, in the WBC play, he has a 250 average, 429 on base percentage, a 1.054 OPS, 2 home runs, and 5 RBIs. Some of these games that in pool play, Judge has been the catalyst to sort of start the scoring for Team USA, where they then pulled away. And then Team Italy, he had that opportunity late in game and did not come through. And I think you mentioned it a little earlier. It's sort of a lose-lose for Aaron Judge in this WBC for how the narrative will be shaped. And again, we treat the WBC more importantly just because we're fans and we're taking national pride. But it's a lose-lose in the way that if he does well And if they win and he performs well, it's like, oh well, you can't really do that in during the regular season. Why can't you do or you can't do
Hmm.
that during the playoffs? Why can't you do what you're doing in the WBC tournament in the playoffs? That's going to be the argument. Then on the other side, if they don't perform well, it's like ha ha ha, you can't do it in the playoffs. You also can't do it in the WBC. What are we talking about? That's how people are going to shape the narrative of Aaron Judge. And I give him credit because he decided to play in this and he's a proud American and he wants to perform well for his country, but there's no other way of looking at it in terms of the conversation from trolls and everything that it's a lose-lose situation for him on both sides.
Oh yeah, no matter what. I mean, even Judge Homer's his first at bat of the WBC, and there's people saying, "Oh, it was a meatball against Brazil. It doesn't matter." Meanwhile, Shohei hits a grand slam on a meatball against Taiwan earlier that day in a game they win 13-0, and everyone's going crazy over it. So it's people looking to shit on Judge because he's a Yankee, and you're right. Ultimately, he's never going to get the credit he deserves. I think the only way would be if Team USA wins this thing and he's gets a couple of late clutch hits in some close games against
Yeah.
like the DR, Japan. So I'm hoping that that's the case and he has a chance to prove some of those haters wrong. But yeah, it's pretty much an uphill battle for Judge. If the U.S. does anything besides win this whole thing, and Judge isn't a big part of that in late and close games, then he's going to get hate, and that just is what it is.
Yeah. So then looking at the rest of the performance by some of the Yankees so far, Austin Wells for Team DR, which I learned I was like, why is Austin Wells playing for Team DR? His mother, both of her parents from the Dominican Republic, so I never knew that going into it. I know it was kind of funny for us to be like, why is Austin Wells playing for Team DR? But he does have that heritage there. He for Team DR, 13 plate appearances, 1 home run, 2 walks, 762 OPS. Looking on Jazz Chisholm before Great Britain was eliminated in 19 plate appearances, had 4 RBIs of 485 OPS, so not the best for Jazz. Jose Caballero performed pretty well, had a home run in 19 plate appearances, 2 stolen bases, and 954 OPS. Paul Goldschmidt so far in his opportunities, 1 for 3. Looking on to some of the pitchers, Camilo Duvall, 2 innings pitched in his appearances, got a strikeout, no earned runs, an appearance by Fernando Cruz, 1 inning pitched, 2 strikeouts. And then David Bednar, 2 innings pitched, no runs, 4 strikeouts. And then we know that Ryan Yarborough didn't perform too well with 3 earned runs. So a lot of these Yankees are getting some opportunities, and we know a lot of these guys are still playing, like Puerto Rico still in the mix, Dominican Republic, as well as Team USA. So a lot of Yankees around. I think it was, as I mentioned earlier, 13 or 14 performing in this WBC, and now we'll see Tim Hill with Team USA. So it's going to be interesting to see that. One comment that I had, or one comment that came out that I would like to get your opinion on, was when Bryce Harper made some comments about the WBC, that the WBC is great, but it's not the Olympics. Did you see this quote? What did you think of it?
Yeah, I saw some people interpreting it as like a shot at the WBC. I don't think that way. I mean, if you think of the Olympics, it's just, an institution. It's been around for literally centuries. And,
Yeah.
I think it would be a big deal. Look at Team USA winning hockey. I understand it's a little bit different circumstances, different sport, obviously beating Canada in overtime the way they did. But, if the Team USA wins this WBC, and we've seen that, I mean, it happened in 2017, it'll be cool. I just don't think it's at the point yet, kind of how we were saying earlier, where it's established enough that it's going to get the same kind of pop if we win a baseball WBC as it would if we were to win baseball in the Olympics in 2028. So I hope they find a way to make it work. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. It's in the summer, just kind of whatever they have to do, whether it's maybe you take 8 games off the season, you call it. If owners can't deal with losing 4 box offices worth of tickets for home games, I don't know what they will do. I think especially too, if you're thinking that 2027 very well could be a strike shortened or even canceled year, I think they're going to need a way to kind of get the casual fans back in on baseball and back excited again. So I think if they can find a way to allow MLB players to participate in the 2028 Olympics, it's absolutely something that they should explore doing.
Yeah, I think also too, but I like the fact that the WBC kind of has that larger pool of teams, because I think when it comes down to it, the Olympics only really allow, with some of their newer competitions, it's not as big of a pool of nations that'll participate. And then also, like, Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. That's not
Right.
technically a country. So I think, and two, one thing that I consider that I said, as we have sort of grown up with the WBC, and then when you hear maybe it's older fans or conversations when you the drive afternoon drive stuff on WFAN, nobody gives a shit
Yeah.
about the WBC. That is I don't want to pigeonhole generations, but that's a generation of fans who grew up loving the World Series and watching teams and regional baseball or however it may be in the cities that they grew up with. But now, since me and you and then other fans, younger fans, are also watching the WBC as it goes along, I think there's going to be, and as history continues with it, I think there's going to be a momentum shift that people are going to give more of a shit about the WBC than we've seen. And I think it's just going to take more tournaments, more stars getting involved like Judge. And it's a good thing that like Shohei, I mean, that clip that you were talking about that he hit the home run on, I think it had maybe over 300 million views and I think it overperformed some of the stats for like World Series clips. And to that, you just say, the sport is in a good place, I think. My takeaway is that I think baseball is in a really good place, and it's unfortunate. I hope that they avoid ruining it, ruining all this good stuff that they have going when 2027
Hmm.
rolls around. But I think it's just as generations change, as tastes change, as the competition just gets more years under its belt, I think it's going to be a good thing. So that, and when it comes to the Olympics, yes, because it's been established for so many years, and you're talking about a century's worth probably of competition versus 2 decades. So
Yeah.
that was my big takeaway from it.
No, I agree with you on both fronts. I think that the WBC is only going to continue to grow in popularity, right? If we're sitting here in 20 years and there's been another 5 or 6 tournaments and another whole generation of kids that grew up watching the WBC every 3 or 4 years, maybe some of these players will be singing a different tune. And you're right, it is cool that it's a 20-team tournament instead of however many are going to be in the Olympics, and Puerto Rico gets to participate as its own entity. So you're completely right from that standpoint. And then too, yeah, I think it's awesome. Obviously, in America we get kind of lost, and people want to say the game is dying because it's not as popular as the NFL here, college football here, which nothing is. I mean, obviously,
No.
football is king in America. As a baseball fan, like I'm not dumb enough to try and argue the contrary. But that being said, you look at these Japanese fans and how crazy they go for their team, at the Tokyo Dome. You look at these DR fans at the games; they're absolutely showing out in Miami, and just how seriously these players take it and the fans take it. You're right. Like, baseball is a global game,
Mhm.
and it's in a really, really good spot. And I think the reason this WBC has been so cool is that it's definitely the best collection of talent that we've had to come out and represent. And I still think too, like, hopefully it only continues to grow. I know guys are still hesitant. I know obviously there was the Diaz injury a couple years ago, and certain pitchers are a little bit afraid. I mean, no disrespect to Nolan McLean, but it would have been really cool if we had like a Hunter Brown or Freed or Garrett Crochet, as our
Crochet. Yeah.
starter, because you look at Team USA's rotation. Obviously, Skubal was only for one game, but you had the two best pitchers in the world in Skubal and Skeens, and Logan Webb, who I think is super underrated and is a bona fide top 10 starter in Major League Baseball. So it would have been cool if there was like one more guy of that caliber to really round out the rotation. And hopefully, as the WBC continues to go on, guys kind of see that as an honor, and they don't turn down the chance to play for their country.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. So tonight, you mentioned it's going to be a little bit of a rematch from that championship in the Winter Olympics with USA taking on Canada in the quarterfinal. It's going to be Logan Webb versus Michael Soroka of Canada. The winner is going to be able to. So they're playing this game in Houston, and then the winner of the game will then move to. It'll go to Lone Depot Park in Miami, and it's going to face the winner of Korea or the DR. I would probably pencil in the Dominican Republic, but you never know. It's one game elimination. I Here's my thing with it. I won because they beat Canada in the hockey game. I would like them to repeat that. But man, if we get to see Paul Skeens versus that DR lineup, that can do something incredibly important for the WBC because he has a 90, I think it's 95 or 97 pitch count
Hmm.
limit. And what we saw from him in that Mexico game, sheesh. They need to win this game so we can watch that on Sunday because Paul Skeens versus the Dominican Republic on a Sunday night. would be very special for just baseball fans and very special for the World Baseball Classic. So we need to see that, man.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right on both fronts. I think, one, we've all, myself included, talked way too much shit to the country of Canada for taking their sport in the Olympics last month with that hockey win.
Yeah,
It
we
would be
cannot lose.
it would be equally embarrassed. Like that's one of the ways they could counterpunch is if they took baseball from us. That
Yeah.
would be pretty crazy. So absolute must win. And yeah, you're right. Paul Skeens versus the DR. Like I think that would just be the most interesting matchup of the entire tournament. You have either the best or second best pitcher on the planet right now. I don't know what he's built up to, but you're right. I know that he is able to throw. I think it's 95 pitches because they increase the pitch limits as the rounds go on. So it would be awesome to see him, hopefully go more than the 4 innings we saw from him against Mexico, against a DR lineup that I think is unequivocally the best in this tournament between Soto and Tatis and Junior Camanero's been balling and Machado and Ketel Marte. Like I'm leaving off guys that not coming to the top of my mind because they're all stars besides Austin Wells. No offense to Austin, if he's your 9 hitter, that's a pretty damn good lineup. So it's definitely something that just as a baseball fan I need to see. You cannot go out against Canada. I'd obviously be very disappointed if the USA gets eliminated against the DR as well, but I would at least understand it. It would be an absolute disaster to lose to this Canada team tonight.
Yeah. And so they got Logan Webb on the tit, and Logan Webb is I have a lot of confidence in that. Uh, Now being where the pitching staff is, and I give Skeens some credit that he's still running out there to hopefully get them to a final match if they win this game. And we know Scooble was returned back to Tigers camp, and that was a whole thing with just he doesn't want to pitch, but he's going into his free agency year. So I don't know. I think it would just be awesome. I really hope we get to see it, man. I hope we get to see it.
Yep.
Let's move on to some Yankee conversation. So for those of you that are not super invested in the WBC, but I think a lot of the people that have stuck around probably very invested in the WBC. Max Fried, as I mentioned at the top, 2026 opening day starter. They officially put that into place. So we get to see Max Fried on opening day versus the San Francisco Giants in San Francisco. That game's going to be on Netflix. I think it's on March 25th, I believe. Yeah, it's on like a Wednesday. So very excited for opening day. We're only 12 days away from opening day. Speaking of number 12, I wanted to ask your opinion on this. So Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez have really been killing it in spring training. Uh, I am one, and me and Tyler have talked in the last couple episodes that we're both on the bandwagon of, hey, they have Trent, they signed him back. There's a with how good his year was last year, there's room to grow, right? He's going to be in another contract year after accepting the qualifying offer. But because they have these younger players and a lot of fans, myself included a little bit, are a little skeptical of what Trent Grisham can do. Can he repeat what he did last year? Because the rest of his history hasn't exactly been on par with what he did in 2025. I have questions about it. Some other fans may feel differently, but I think the interesting dynamic to me with how good Spencer Jones has been in spring and how good Jason Dominguez has been in spring. And listen, I'm not sitting here telling you that I think they're going to be stellar players in the major leagues. We really don't know. I'm one that believes that prospects, we talk up prospects a little bit too much, but there's a lot of mystery that goes on there. I will say that for how Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez have performed in spring, if Trent Grisham is not close to what he was last year and isn't having that level of production, I think it's going to be a strong debate of how there's going to be fans that are going to be saying, why don't we get these players in here if Trent takes a step back? I don't think the Yankees will do it because they have so much trust with him and they give him a long leash and they want him to play that center field position. But I do think it's going to be a topic if Trent Grisham is not necessarily the same performer that he was offensively last year. I don't know what your 2 cents would be about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Yankees are confident in Grisham. I mean, I know that it was kind of the news of the offseason for a while that, did the Yankees think he was going to turn down the qualifying offer, whatever it is. But I don't think the Yankees offer him $22 million if they weren't at least semi-confident that he has a year comparable to what he did in 2025. So I'm with you that I don't know that he's going to hit 34 home runs again, but I think that there's reason to believe that he'll at least be in the ballpark. Look, I think that it's a really weird spot with both Dominguez and Jones because they both have different tools and different shortcomings. Like Dominguez has shown he can, hit competently from the left side at the major league level. He's one of the better base runners on the team. He absolutely flies around the bases. At the same time, he's a liability against left-handed pitching. He was very poor against lefties last year. Kind of takes away his ability as a switch hitter when you have no confidence in him to hit from the right side really at all, let alone with power. He did hit a home run from the right side the other day, which I was encouraged to see. And the defense in left field has been just terrible. So that's another aspect of the game he has to work on. And then Jones, on the other hand, the defensively, he's the guy that could play center field. So theoretically, he starts next year, when Grisham probably walks. I don't think the Yankees extend him. But he still strikes out at a really high clip. So I know he's hit some home runs this spring, and it's made some Yankee fans excited. But for me, I'm still just very skeptical that his bat plays up at the major league level. I think he's going to strike out a ton. He already does that in the minor leagues. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's definitely going to be a bust, but I'm not bought into the point on Spencer Jones's bat where I'm sitting here saying, yeah, I think that he can confidently play center field every day and be, a better option than Trent Grisham. So it's kind of weird. I'm looking forward to seeing what Dominguez and Jones do in the minors with a little bit more time there this year, and just see if either one of them really pushes the envelope. I mean, obviously, if Grisham's hitting like 190 and they're crushing it down there, maybe there's a decision to be made. But I don't think just because Trent Grisham is not replicating his 2025, the Yankees are going to be quick to make a change and swap in one of those two guys.
Yeah, I think it's just a conversation that's probably going to happen if he does stay a little mediocre or below mediocre. I'm on the same page as you though. I don't think that Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez are necessarily as good as what some people may talk them up to be as top level prospects. I think a couple years ago they definitely had some more cachet, but I think they have some ability. I'm not going to discount that. I just also, my argument, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Trent Grisham, is you got to have some more proven MLB talent out there.
Mm-hmm.
And based on his last year, which was at the major league level, versus two other guys that are still largely unknown, I think the Yankees and me, who is a little even doubtful of him, would like to see that as the lineup. And then it's also tricky then too. You're adding in. I saw one clip the other day where that was like, don't even keep Stanton in there and have Jones in the outfield. And they're already lefty heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot of lefties then you're adding in still. So it's not even as if they bring in that dynamic where he's a bat from the right side. And yes, Dominguez is a switch hitter, but he's terrible from the right side. So I just think it's going to be a conversation if Trent doesn't perform as the way that and it's because, and the noise got a little louder because Trent wasn't very good in spring to start spring. He started hitting a little better, but yeah, it's going to be a fascinating thing to watch how it plays out and how Trent gets off to begin 2026. And do you think Jason Dominguez, do you think he starts on the opening day roster? Because my hunch now is that I think he may start in the minors. I think we're kind of here. It's kind of pointing in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with the Grichuk move, I think that's signaling that they need another right-handed bat. And to your point, Jason has not hit left-handed pitching well, and I don't think that it would have necessarily made a ton of sense for him to start on the opening day roster as it is, because I want him to play every day. I want him to get the reps. I want him to hit from the right side, hopefully, and improve the defense, because I think, I'm disappointed as someone who's been a big Jason guy. Obviously, he comes up and lights the world on fire for a week and a half in 2023. If you told me that we'd be sitting here 3 years later and he's on the opening day roster, yes, I'm disappointed, but I still think that Jason Dominguez makes a big impact on this team this year. You can pretty much pencil in Stanton getting hurt for at least a couple weeks of the season, and then obviously, if anything happens to, God forbid, Judge or Belly or Grish, I think he's the first one to get the call and play every day, because you know what he is, at least against right-handed pitching. I think he's an average to above average hitter against right-handed pitching. Hopefully he gets a little bit of the power back this year. That's kind of the one thing that was disappointing from him last year at the major league level, was the lack of pop that we had seen from him throughout his minor league career. But I just don't understand why some Yankee fans are all the way out on Dominguez, but they still have high hopes for Spencer Jones. Like, to me, it's a little bit of shiny new toy where they've seen Dominguez at the major league level before, and Jones, you really only hear about him when he's on those homer streaks in the minors. But if you look into the numbers, like I said, he still strikes out a ton, and he's like 3 years older than Jason. So for me, it doesn't really make sense to be talking about Jones' potential for improvement and then also at the same breath say, actually, Jason Dominguez is terrible and I'm out on him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that just because it's the shiny new toy. All right, before we get out of here and get ready for some WBC baseball tonight, let's talk about some other performances in spring, and then also just some general updates on. I guess we could start with Garrett Cole, who is seriously working his way back in a good. It seems like everything we've really heard from a lot of the beat reporters and people close to this team is Garrett Cole's making some really good progress. So he completed a 35 live batting practice session yesterday. And Jack Curry yesterday also said that the team is likely to discuss the possibility of him pitching in the grapefruit league game. And we saw a few videos of him facing live batters when it came to Aaron Judge and some of the other bigger stars on the Yankees roster. So he's quote unquote shut down and will throw again in 6 days of a part of his rehab process. So there is a chance that he makes a legitimate spring appearance for the Yankees in the next week or two. And to me, we were thinking that Garrett Cole, I would say the rough timeline, we're thinking like late May, early June, around that time frame based on when he had the Tommy John surgery. But this is really good news to hear, knock on wood, hoping that it continues. But we want to see what Garrett Cole looks like back out. I know they say like when you have Tommy John, you're basically pitching with a new arm, kind of. That's the way that they say it. But I'm very excited to see a rotation where we finally get to see at the top Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, now Cam Schlittler, Luis Heel. I'm very excited to hear that Cole is making good progress, and I don't know what kind of expectations you would have for him just early on. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get back, but this guy is a Cy Young Award winner. He's pitched in the World Series, pitched in a lot of playoff games, and he's a stud performer. So it's not too surprising that he's working his way back the way he is because he's a dog. He's a dog.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to get the same Garrett Cole, who's obviously sorely missed last year. I'm excited to see him back on the mound. And yeah, I don't know that he's going to be 100% of himself. At least, it's pretty fair to say he won't be right away. It'll take him some time. It's obviously been over a year now since he's been on a big league mound. But all that being said, I have no reason to believe that he can't bounce back and be close to the same guy that we saw before the injury. In 2023, the last time he pitched really fully healthy, he was the best pitcher in the world. So obviously, there's a couple guys that have surpassed him since then, and I'm not saying he's going to get back and be as good as Skubal or Paul Skeens this year. But, look at what Justin Verlander did coming off Tommy John surgery at 3 or 4 years older than Cole, I believe. He came back and he won a Cy Young in 2022. So I have no reason to believe that Garrett Cole can't come back and once again be among the elite pitchers in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, 100%. I'm hoping for it, man. I'm hoping for it. Cam Schlittler also looking really good in spring. 1.5 ERA, six innings pitched, 10 Ks. Luis Heel also looking really good so far in spring, 11 and a third, 2-0 in his recorded games, a 2.38 ERA and 15 strikeouts. Anything you're looking out for mainly with Schlittler and Heel? I know Heel has somewhat been on an afterthought, which you could think of like a rookie of the year candidate that we had so much promise for, but now it's sort of like Cam Schlittler steps in and kind of when we talk about the shiny toy, it's the same dynamic, but they're both here and they're both good pitchers. And that's the back end of your rotation. And that's a pretty good back end of the rotation to have. And then we haven't even really mentioned Ryan Weathers either. So however that's going to shake out is going to be fascinating. But we know because Carlos Rodon is out for a period of time that they need extra arms, even to just get through a season. You're going to need a pitcher like Luis Heel. You're going to need a pitcher like Cam Schlittler because pitchers are going to go down and miss time. But it's spring training, but it's good to see that these guys are performing well. And largely, I would expect it to translate into the regular season because everyone's going to have their eyes on Cam Schlittler especially.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely down on Heel right now. He misses a bulk of last year and he comes back, and the swing and miss stuff was not nearly what it was in his Rookie of the Year campaign a year prior. So I'm excited to see if he can bounce back because, yeah, like you said, if he's your number 5 starter, and he's pitching close to how he did in 2024, that's a hell of a rotation. Cam, I'm really, really excited for him. Trying to temper my expectations, but he's just been firing in spring. He's got a couple new pitches. I know he hasn't throwing the change as much. I saw that he said it might not be an everyday kind of pitch for him, but the cutter he's thrown looks nasty. It tunnels really nicely off of his fastball. So, for a guy who did what he did last year as a rookie, really only being a fastball pitcher, to come back with a new pitch that he can go to confidently is huge. Weathers has looked nasty. As long as he can stay healthy, that's just kind of been his thing. He's a little bit of a lottery ticket as far as, successful full MLB seasons, but there's no
Yeah, you gotta
denying the
stay healthy.
talent. Yeah, and then you didn't even mention Will Warren, who I know Yankee fans are probably down on. When the games he was bad last year, he was really bad, but he still took the ball 30 plus times as a rookie and really kept the Yankees in it with a chance to win the game almost every single time. So if he can kind of limit some of those blow up innings and starts and continue to keep the team close. I'm not saying he's the guy that you're even going to look to take the ball in a playoff game, but I've seen the Michael King comps. He's got some pretty nasty stuff. He's looked good in spring, and he's a guy that like you said, between Schlittler and Heel and Weathers and Fried and Cole and Rodon, he's kind of just the afterthought of this group. But he's in the opening day rotation, and the Yankees are going to need him to kind of replicate and build on what he did last year if they want to have a solid rotation these first couple months of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one other one that's turning heads is Carlos Lagrange. So far, 9 2/3, a .93 ERA, and also 9 strikeouts. Uh, the way I know people are saying this guy should be on the roster, and I was listening on the Fan yesterday to Tiki and Evan made an interesting comparison. I don't know if you listened to it. I know you're tuned in a little bit here and there with the WFAN, but he was saying how the Yankees should be a little careful not to have a Jabba situation happen with him. And I do see the comps a little bit because the rotation, while it is uh, injured at the moment, and maybe people would say, "Oh, throw him in the starting rotation," but they do have a lot of starting arms, and then they say, "Oh, we'll just put him in the bullpen." And then you can just draw him back into the starting rotation. And even then, he's still a prospect and he still hasn't proven something at the major league level. So it just comes back to this with Lagrange, and you could say it for Jones and Dominguez and you mentioned it too with some of the other guys. You got to temper expectations a little bit. We can't get too excited over what's happening in spring training because we have to remember that this is a 3 to 4 week period, right?
Yep.
Baseball is going to be played for 6 months, and there's going to be a lot of different things that happen throughout a major league season. And players that we've heard from that it always happens every year. The start of April, we see these guys that come out of the gates, but then can't hold it together for another couple months. We saw it with Anthony Volpe. You see what happens when you
Yep.
just throw a rookie right into the fire and you don't give him enough time to develop or this, that. It's just, I think the big takeaway for me, even though we're seeing a lot of these guys perform really well, is just temper expectations. That's my takeaway from it.
Absolutely, and obviously, yeah, Job has been the guy that's been brought up, and I keep going back to because it felt like the Yankees for his career kind of bounced him back and forth a bunch. So I think that would be my cautionary tale is I'd much rather him start the year in the minors as a starter, stay stretched out, see what he can do because again. Just as easily as we need bullpen help right now. Who's to say that in a month, if there's a delay in Rodon's rehab and a couple starters, God forbid, go down in April for the Yankees, there could just as well be a hole in that rotation that we need filled by Lagrange. So I understand that on paper the bullpen is the need more than the starting rotation, and it's hard not to get excited about electric kind of swing and miss stuff like that at the back end of a game as a potential bridge to Bednar in the ninth. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have been comparing him to Dellin Betances, just that big, hard throwing righty with a wipeout curveball as well. So I totally understand that. But that being said, I think that him as a reliever should be a button that they almost deploy later in the year if the bullpen is a
Yeah.
pressing need and the rotation's okay, rather than just kind of resigning this kid, at this stage of his career to being a reliever with no plans to ever go back into the rotation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Other news, Lombard and Ben Hess were reassigned to their minor league camp, so we saw Lombard making some good plays and making some noise in the minors with along with a lot of the younger Yankees. Also, Stanton is now officially back hitting in spring training. So far, despite him not being able to open a bag of chips due to his bad elbows, he has so far he has 3 home runs, a 364 average, a 1.546 OPS. So this was the tale that I said last podcast with Tyler is yes, we know that Stanton is going to miss time. You can pencil that in, but even last year where we started and around this time where we didn't even think Giancarlo was going to play in 2025, he went out there and he had a 944 OPS in 77 games. And yes, while he did miss a good chunk of time, that is still a bat that the Yankees really need. A right-handed bat, mind you, that this
Yes.
team really, really needs in the lineup to split up nicely. And we know he didn't perform in October last year the way we wanted in that like he did in 2024, but he is a proven postseason performer. And so I think the big takeaway was everyone was freaking out on the internet about him not being able to open chips, but when the guy goes in there, it seems that he could still swing a baseball bat and hit the freaking ball out of the ballpark. So I don't really care. That's my thing there.
Absolutely, they're going to need him, and like you said, he's not going to play 150 games this year. He's just not. But they need him, especially with a team that really lacks right-handed impact bats outside of him and Judge. They need him to be on the field and producing at the level that he did last year. So it's good to see him back in spring. It obviously it just seems like a pain tolerance thing for him,
Yeah.
which he's a tough guy. I'm not worried from that standpoint. Just hopefully he can stay on the field as much as possible and keep mashing the way that he has.
Absolutely. So last thing I'll leave you here and then we'll sign off. What's the prediction for tonight's game? And then the next time I'll pod probably be not till next week. So it would be on the bracket for this. We have Canada tonight. Then it would match up to be either the DR, Korea, and then on the other side of the bracket, we have Japan versus Venezuela, Italy versus Puerto Rico. So it's a stacked bracket, man. What's your hunch telling you of this road for Team USA and this WBC and what you maybe if you have a difference between what you expect is going to happen versus what you want to happen or what you think is the best for baseball or just what you think of now? It's just some final thoughts.
Yeah, I think they come out hungry. I think that this team, the last couple of days they've been getting shit on, somewhat deservedly so.
Yeah.
Obviously, the DeRosa, blunder against Italy almost cost them a chance to even play in this stage. So I think they're going to come out hungry. I think the lineup has really been inconsistent. I mean, there hasn't been a game where they kind of just put a beating on a team for how good this lineup is, right? We acknowledge, Raleigh has had a bad WBC, Harper's had a bad WBC. So I think this lineup is too good to go as kind of held down as they've been for a lot of this tournament. I think they come out hot tonight. I trust Logan Webb. I think they beat Canada. I think it's like 10-3. I don't think it's even particularly close. I
All
mean,
right.
I hope that I'm correct in that assessment because it's not like Canada's bad, but they're minus 800 favorites. I think they're gonna come out hungry. I hope they could beat the DR. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the end of the road, but again, I think we're gonna need to score runs to beat them. DR's weakness is that their pitching staff is not as good as ours. I don't think, even though they have the better lineup. So if they can get through the DR, I'm fully expecting a USA Japan rematch in the final.
Yeah.
Judge versus Otani. MLB wants nothing more than that. WBC fans want nothing more than that. So I think that that's my prediction. I don't know if the U.S. is going to win it all. I think it just fully depends on can their lineup be better than they were in pool play? Because if they hit the same way, they're not making it past the DR.
I think they're going to be hungry tonight based on the conversations and the embarrassment it really was the past few days. So I think they're going to win tonight. And then DR and that lineup is going to be a really good test, but I think what will hold Team USA back is that rotation and just the pitching in general. Well, I should say if they get to DR, they got Paul Skeens on the mound, so that less so. But we're going to
Right.
see how that bullpen performs, and then if they're in a championship game, that's going to be very interesting. So I'm holding out hope that they can go forward because they only have one championship. It's baseball
Yeah.
is America's sport. They got one championship, man. And it was in 2017. They got to win another one. They got to put some hardware on there. So I'm hoping that they can go ahead and do it. But DR and then maybe even Japan or whether it be Puerto Rico. I think it's going to be Japan. That Japan is just a really good team.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be Japan in the finals. And if they can get past DR and Canada, we'll see what happens. But
Yep.
all right, man. It was a good conversation, good time talking some WBC. That's it for episode 235. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a rate and review, comment on YouTube what you guys think of what's going to happen in this next couple days for the WBC. If you're into the WBC or not, what you think of the direction of the Yankees and how they're treating Spencer Jones, Jason Dominguez, and the Trent situation, and what you think is going to happen for this stuff leading up to opening day. So that's it for episode 235. Really appreciate everyone for listening. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on all of our social channels. Go follow Nick over on X as well as the George's Box Pod, where you can find him there. Appreciate everyone for listening. We'll catch you at 236. Peace.